Hey, this is Matt from Custom Car Grills with a mesh install for the 2018 and newer Subaru Crosstrek. In this video, I'll show you how to modify the factory grill bezel and install our pre-made mesh piece. The only factory component that we need for this is the front frame of the stock grill shown here. The one that I'm using doesn't have an indented curve on the lower edge that I've seen on some of them and is part number 91123FL170. Let's flip this around and take a look at some of the attachment points. There are some clips here that were used for holding together the other part of the grill. There's also some screw mounts here that are going to be the main attachment points for the grill to be mounted back onto the bumper. If you're not sure on how to remove the grill from the bumper, I'll link a good how-to video about that here. After the grill assembly is removed, just unclip the front piece to get caught up to this point. There is a small amount of modification needed for the grill. These upper corners need to be trimmed back a little bit, and some unneeded clips will be cut off too, along with leveling out this side area. To do the cutting, I'll grab my Dremel and equip it with their number 543 cutting and shaping wheel. There might be a couple small nubs that can be easily trimmed off like so. The small clips that are not screw mounts can be removed too. For the funky side area, it needs to be hollowed out fairly thoroughly. I took a few different angles of approach to get it taken care of before moving forward. From there, just follow along the whole perimeter of the back of the grill. By removing the clips that held the other half of the grill together, but keeping the screw mounts. Next, I'm going to tackle those upper corners and the small bump on the inside here. By using a couple pieces of painter's tape, I can redraw the contour of the back of the grill. I went from the corner to where one of the tabs was, and then made another line from the old tab to where the screw mount area is. I'll use the same type of tape to redraw a line that's angled from the outer edge of the grill to lower on the tip where the bump is. This inside area doesn't need much work, and I'm just simply using the top of the shaping wheel to grind down the plastic until it reaches the tape line. Here's a slightly better view so you can see how I'm just slowly whittling down this area until it has a uniform depth with the rest of the grill. I flipped the grill around so I can cut on the upper corners a little bit more easily. While these could be shaved down like the previous areas, there's enough plastic here to make a solid cut through it like so. On the other upper corner, I did the same thing as shown here. Afterward, I went back and picked off some of the burnt on bits and cleaned it up a little bit. Here's how my frame looks now. I've got all the uneven spots leveled out, along with all of the old clips cut off. I think we're ready to do the install of the mesh now, and speaking of which, let's take a look at the mesh piece that we have for sale on our website. This is a mesh piece that is pre-cut and pre-formed specifically for this model Crosstrek. It's made from our Hex XXL aluminum grill mesh and has all the right cuts and bends made in all the right spots. We've tried to take all of the guesswork out of this install. With all the right cuts made, this mesh piece will lay on the back of the grill bezel like so. And please note that the bent tabs on the mesh piece are facing forward. Next, I'll grab some cable ties and foam to help temporarily hold the mesh and grill together. The foam will help protect the finish of the grill bezel, while the ties will help draw the mesh closer to the back edge. The process is simple. All I need to do is feed the tail end of the tie through the mesh from the front and fasten it from behind the mesh. For best results, I like to have the head of the tie resting on the back of the mesh. Here's another view of me fastening on a tie. It's also best to not loop the tie up too high on the mesh, and while the ties need to be on tight to hold the mesh flush up against the grill, it's best to not over tighten these to the point where the grill frame is going to distort. The sides and corners aren't much different than the top and bottom edges. There might be a little trial and error to find the best placement, but overall the attachment points should be obvious. At this point, the side areas will have just a little bit of a gap, and there's a fairly easy fix to make this much less of an issue. With the grill flipped face down, I just simply push the mesh out by hand. This will get a better contour that's less gappy than before. The only area that might not be intuitive as to how to fasten on the mesh is this protruding tab area. For this, I just used a larger tie and wrapped it horizontally like so. Just so the tie doesn't move later on, I tucked it under the edge. Odds are the tie won't be moving if we have it in this position. Next, I'll come back with some wire cutters and snip off the tail ends of the ties and throw them away. And before moving forward, I want to double check my work. Thus far, this is looking really good. The mesh seems to be fairly flush up against the back of the grille. Gaps seem very minimal and I don't see any distortion, so I think I'm good to go with bonding the mesh and grille together now. To permanently adhere the mesh and grille bezel together, I'm going to use automotive goop. Though other adhesives such as Plyo-Grip can be used, or other two-part epoxies. To apply the goop, I'm simply using a toothpick to assist with dispensing it in and around the area where the mesh and bezel come in contact. It's super important to not spill any of this through the front, and I'm taking my time to make sure I get full coverage. Again, the name of this glue is called Automotive Goop, and I'll have it linked in a card above right now. It's a great weatherproof adhesive that I've been using for many years. It's cost effective as well, but there is one small drawback to it. This stuff does take a long time to cure. Plan on letting this sit for a day while it cures. Also, for this install I used one full 3.7 ounce tube of the goop. Placing a fan nearby to blow on it can help speed up the curing process, but for the most part this is just a matter of waiting. And on the next day I came back to snip off the ties. I threw them away with the protective foam. The mesh install is now complete. Let's flip it around and see how it looks. Wow, I'm really happy with how this turned out. The badgeless design is super clean. Here's a closer look, and I'm really impressed with how seamless the transition from mesh to bezel is here. Of course, if owners want to add on custom emblems at this point, we have a nice blank slate to work with. Some small Raptor-style lights could also be a good add-on later down the road. For now though, this sleek plain grille is looking really good to me. Here's a couple of pics of one of these installed on a Crosstrek. I like the way that this looks out in the wild, and debadging the grille makes a world of difference in how this looks. Well, that's all I've got for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions, then feel free to ask me, and thanks for watching.